The fastest way to grow sales on Amazon in 2025 is CTR, that is click-through rate. And so the main image of a product is how it's represented. So a lot of people in watching or listening to this podcast may have made the decision to listen or watch based on the thumbnail of the podcast. If the thumbnail has text on it that's easy to read and it has an Amazon logo or something, and they're a seller, they're going to be like, I want to listen to this. The same thing applies to an Amazon listing. If in the main image, it's not clear what the product is in less than 2 seconds, they're just going to scroll past it, right? If you have a supplement and you don't have easy to read text, let's say you have blue text against a red background, one of the worst readable design combinations of all time. You can't read that easily, and you have to squint like this, like a 60-year-old man. You are going to have very bad CTR. And so it's very important to focus on click-through rate as a way to grow sales on Amazon, because it's the very first thing that happens in the search engine. When CTR goes up, so does conversion. When CTR goes up, so does traffic. So this is the number one fastest and easiest way to increase both traffic and conversion. So there's lots of smaller tips we can add into the foray here, like easy to read keyword on the main image is probably the best hack. The color definitions to make it easy to read, very important. How many accessories does it have? Does it come with a charging cable if it's a technology product? Make sure that's included in the main image. If it's a beauty product, can you put a splash on there? Can you show me the product in use? Can you lift the lid of the lotion and show me the lotion inside of the main image? Does the product have a good show and tell in and outside of the packaging? If so, you should probably show the product in and outside of the package in the main image. And then if it has ingredients, so I sell artisan soaps on Amazon for 5 years. I would put the ingredients of my artisan soaps in the backdrop of the main image. Now, some people will say, hey, doesn't this break Amazon terms of service or conditions? It does in many ways, but Amazon barely enforces it, and they definitely do it on their own listing. So it would be very easy for us to do a screen share, go to any Amazon product and find out how they violate their own rules. So in a world like that, I do endorse these things. I've been doing it without having any issues, no suspensions, no listing yanks. Sometimes you get a suppression, but you can fix it within 15 minutes typically. So those are the things I generally recommend to increase CTR. But by and large, having a keyword added to the main image is the number one hack I will give you today.
100% agree. Everyone is so obsessed with traffic, but if your conversion rate sucks, right, you're just burning money. I heard that there could be problem if your conversion rate is way too high. I wonder what's your strategy on hitting that sweet spot for the conversion rates for your clients?
Yeah, so an average conversion rate on Amazon today is anywhere from 8 to 12%. And so if you're in that 13 to 15%, you're doing excellent. But if this does change by category, let's be clear, but I'm speaking in broad strokes right now. A typical listing above 16% conversion rate is too high. So it's not very often you hear somebody saying you have a too high of a conversion rate. So usually I get a couple of head looks. Why? What is he talking about? Why would I have too high of a conversion rate? Well, it turns out if your conversion rate is too high, you're underspending on ads. And you're not gaining new customers. You're leaving sales on the table. And so I like creating these easy to follow frameworks or bright lines because they typically check out 9 out of 10 times for a typical Amazon brand or listing. If you have too high of a conversion rate, you don't have enough money being spent on ads. And if you don't have enough money being spent on ads, you don't have enough traffic, which means you're leaving sales on the table. So as a brand owner, it behooves you to make sure that you have these things in balance with your own strategy or your own parameters that you've set up. So if we were to ask the seller who's listening to this on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your goal? 1 being profit at the cost of growth, 10 being growth at the cost of profit. What is your number? When you self-assess this, and typically most answers I get are somewhere in that 6 to 7 range. People want to have a little bit of growth, but they don't want to give up profitability too much to get there. But when you understand your number, and if you said 10, but you don't spend money on ads, I wouldn't believe you. And if you said 1, but you spend $100,000 on ads, I also wouldn't believe you either, right? There has to be like a truth to the self-diagnostics here. But consumers that are interested in your products, and if they're coming at a high conversion rate, you can take advantage of that by finding lookalikes. You can take advantage of this by spending more on cursory keywords or category targeting and sponsored display ads. And a lot of people aren't doing DSP today. And DSP is probably the most underrated platform to advertise on with Amazon right now. And it's getting people off of Amazon to come to Amazon to buy your product. There's also retargeting. And there's probably 17 other ad types that we could talk about today that a lot of brand owners aren't even aware of. That can happen behind the scenes. We could talk about video ads. We could talk about embedding things and ASIN targeting and day parting and segmentation and all these different technical terms we could throw around. But at the end of the day, if you're not spending enough on ads and your conversion rate's too high, the simplest solution to that is to spend more on ads, and it won't hurt your margin because your conversion is already good. So spending money on ads, you'll get more sales at the same conversion, or slightly less, but it's typically a good ACoS.
That's awesome. Let's talk about the creative execution, because back in the day, you could get away with some pretty basic product photos, right? The visual standard just skyrocketed on Amazon. What's your main image strategy? Is there any top hack?
So the number one hack I'll give on images outside of the CTR stuff I already mentioned is the size of the image. I'd recommend a 2000 by 1600 image, so that it shows up on mobile as large as possible. So most of us, when we shop on Amazon, are pulling up our phone, are looking at the search results. And so you need to optimize for mobile with some of that in mind. The other thing I'll mention is text is for robots, pictures are for people. So once you understand that, you will optimize the copy and keyword stuff at galore, but the images need to be inviting. They need to be easy to follow, easy to understand. And so the text against the images is critical for readability. You need to show lifestyle images. So sometimes I'll look at a product and the customer avatar is not present. So what is a customer avatar? Well, it's basically your most ideal customer. And so if you are trying to target and you show a dog on the listing, it will be off-putting to a high percentage of cat owners because a lot of cat owners don't like dogs. And a lot of times I'll come into a brand or a listing and they're selling the same product to both cat and dog owners. And that's silly. That is leaving sales on the table because in politics, your goal is to cast this wide tent and get everybody under the tent and get as many votes as possible in a democratic society. But the opposite is true in marketing. You want to have a narrow tent. Why? Because when people come to your tent, you want them to immediately identify that your product is for them. It's for me. And so if you have a pet product and you want to sell it to both cats and dogs, I would actually separate those listings, have one for cat owners and one for dog owners, and only show cats on the cat listing and only show dogs on the dog listing, because you don't want to feed a cat owner does not want to feed a dog biscuits to a cat. They just don't. And so with that in mind, you can cross apply a lot of the customer avatar methodologies into your designs, into your images. So for example, lifestyle images are very underrepresented on Amazon. And so you have 6 or 7 images you can load on a listing plus a video. Make sure you do fill the video out. Videos do show up in interesting locations and in additional ways that an image cannot show up. So I definitely recommend that. But a lot of times people forget to show the product in use. So if I'm selling a water bottle and I only show the water bottle, but I don't show me drinking the water bottle like this, that is a missed opportunity. Because if you show the customer avatar using the product and showcasing who it's for, your conversion rate is going to go up because you can have them see themselves using your product in real time. It's just a psychological thing, right? We could talk about demographics. We could talk about who the customer avatar is. We could talk about how to showcase the right customer avatar to the right customer through targeting and methodologies. But to simplify a lot of that to one soundbite, who is your most ideal customer? Dan Kennedy taught this by using a very interesting phrase or story. He said, who is the number one customer for a mail order bride? Which is kind of crazy to think about in 2025. But I think he gave this metaphor back in the 80s or 90s or something, pre-internet. And the answer to that question is a 3-time divorce truck driver. Right. That's a very specific customer. It's not even just all truck drivers. It's 3-time divorced truck drivers. Highly specific. Now, the problem is when I talk to brand owners, I talked to somebody the other day who sold toothbrushes. And I said, who is your target customer? And they said, anybody with teeth. And I said, that's not true. You're not selling this to a baby with his first tooth. And you're like, yeah, okay, you're right. You're not selling this to somebody with dentures. That's not the right bristle for somebody with dentures. And you're like, yeah, okay. So I'm like, all right, so we just narrowed it down. It's not for babies. It's not for old people. But is it for my 8-year-old daughter, or is it for your 40-year-old son? And we try to narrow it down further and further. And it's just interesting to see that a lot of brand owners just are out of touch. They don't understand who their actual customer avatar is. So my recommendation or takeaway is to understand that and get as granular as possible. One way you can do that is to talk to your customers. I know, scary, right? Talk to your customers. But this crazy idea has made me millions of dollars. All I do is I go to the customer and I make 3 observations. I'll ask a couple questions and make an observation. I'll ask first, what do you want? Which right now, a lot of people are like, yeah, that one's pretty obvious, right? What do you want? Well, the problem is that a lot of brands are operated by venture capital who don't actually care what customers want. If you look at the fashion industry doesn't ask people what they want. They just tell you what you should want, right? And for whatever reason, that works. Celebrities wearing fashion and all that. Adam Sandler doesn't care about the fashion industry. That dude is wearing basketball shorts in his own movies, with Happy Gilmore 2 just released on Netflix, right? There are going to be outliers to that, but by and large, fashion industry, they tell you what you want. So number one thing you need to do as a brand owner is simply ask customers, what do you want? The second thing is just as obvious, give it to them. But a lot of times I'm talking to brand owners, they never ask their customers what they want, and then they don't give it to them. And that's a problem. But the third thing that most people usually forget to do, though, and this is the most critical one, after you give the customer what they want, ask them, did you get what you wanted? And what you tend to find out is that a lot of customers did not get what they wanted. And then you're like, oh, I thought my target demographic was the 3-time divorce drivers, but it's actually 8-year-old girls, right? And now I'm going to invent a unicorn toothbrush with a light, and it sings at night. And all of a sudden, we have a very different customer set. You can evolve the product. You can get the 2.0. You can go from alpha to beta on your product dev, and you have a very different environment. So I know that was a very weird metaphor to go into and an anecdote to understand, but customer avatars should dictate the design of your listings, and you need to showcase those customer avatars using the product and show the features with them in mind. Because one customer avatar will care about the technical aspects of the product, and another customer avatar will care about who is using the product. And you have to know what kind of product you have. Do you have a demand generated product where you have to teach people how to use the product and solve a problem they don't know about? Are you selling sliced bread 10 years before anybody knew what sliced bread was? That's how long it took sliced bread to catch on, by the way. Or are you selling a co-op demand product where you're just stealing market share from the number one guy? Maybe your dude wipes, and you're stealing market share from toilet paper. And it's not a demand gen product because people immediately understand what your product is and who it's for, but you're just a really clever brand and you steal market share and you have a co-op demand. So understanding who your product's for, understanding how to position it will dictate all design aspects whatsoever on Amazon or e-commerce or marketing in general.
100%. As someone working in marketing, I do think to understand the ICP, understand your client's avatar, the best way is directly talking with them.